Hello, my name is Lexie Ryerson, and this is my senior project on organizing a live animal presentation in Millis for the community. So my essential question is, what are the steps you need to organize a live animal program in Millis for the public? So first, I'm going to break down my project into its three major parts. The first is anything that happened between October and November, which is the setting up of my presentation. That's me getting a mentor, designing on a zoo to host the event, how I decide on the location, time, and date, as well as what I did for advertising. The second section is the event itself, which I'll not only cover what happened, but also the positives and negatives of it. The third section is anything that happened between February and May, and that's what happened after the event. This includes what I did for fundraising, changes I make for next time, and my connection to vision of a graduate. So why did I choose this project? I chose it because I have a personal love of animals that stem back to childhood, and I always knew I wanted to do something with animals for this project. However, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do until I took a trip to Buttonwood Park Zoo last winter and absolutely loved it. There I had a stroke of inspiration. I knew I wanted to help these animals any way I could, and therefore I wanted to inspire others to do the same. I knew the zoo could help with the programs they offered. Additionally, I aspired to be a zookeeper one day, and I knew that this project could help me connect with people in the field and allow me to pick their brains on how to achieve my goal. Lastly, it involves actual animals and isn't just about them. Many conservation things I've attended only ever talk about animals, and I always remember feeling slightly disappointed. I wanted to do something that would inspire and save disappointment in others. So before we begin, I do want to talk a little bit about my mentor. Miss Cheney is a Millis High School science teacher, and I asked her to do this as she has done a similar thing for last year's senior week. Because of this, she has experience with organizing events that involve live animals and the organizations that work with them. Therefore, she can provide valuable insight into working with these organizations. Additionally, I've worked alongside her before, and she's great to work with. She's easy to talk to, making it easier for me to reach out and ask questions when I need to. So, what is the event? It is an educational live outreach program hosted by a zoo on behalf of a host. It typically involves an educator from a zoo coming to a location to present to an audience. Typically the motivation is to spread knowledge on the animals themselves, as well as why they're important to us today. They're often aimed at young kids, but many places do offer a wide variety of programs aimed at various ages. So what did I hope to achieve with my project? I wanted to support educational outreach programs in the zoos themselves. Zoos can provide a multifaceted range of services for society and animals alike, from conservation to spreading awareness on global programs and inspiring change and activism in others. I also wanted to support zoo conservation programs as they help prevent species extinction and provide advice and skills to community and policymakers to help better our world. I also want to get people aware and involved in conservation. This is because I want people to have a significant impact to participate in conservation and sustain those intentions. This is very important because in today's world we are currently undergoing the sixth mass extinction, which is caused entirely by humans, and therefore I believe we should all play a role in trying to minimize this impact in any way possible. So now that I knew what I wanted to do, I actually had to figure out a zoo to actually host the event through. I compared a couple different zoos, but I chose Buttonwood Park Zoo for a couple different reasons. The first is its distance, as it was one of the closest zoos with only being roughly an hour away and in state. The second was the cost, as it was one of the cheaper options, and I wanted to make sure I could afford the event. It was only $200 for the event, plus $108 for the mileage fees. Third was accreditation. It's accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is the highest standard for zoo accreditation. This is important to me because not all zoos work tirelessly towards conservation. This is a good way to separate the two different types of zoos. The last was presentation length, as it was 45 minutes long, and I felt that was a good time that wasn't too long or too short. So my next step was actually choosing a location. I ended up choosing the Millis Public Library for a couple of different reasons. The first is that it's a well-known and public place, which means it would be easy for not only the representative to find, but all the participants. The second, the room would allow for the most amount of participants, meaning no matter how many people showed up, there would be enough room to accommodate them. The third and last was that it was easy to book, which made so as I had not yet decided a time, I could then just pick any time I needed, regardless of what I ended up choosing. Though before I did book the location, I ended up reaching out to the Millis Public Library to confirm a couple things. The first were if animals were allowed in the room, which I got explicit confirmation that they were, which was nice. The second was how to pay for the room and if I actually needed to at all. Through a series of emails, it was confirmed that this would be classified as a non-for-profit paid event, which means I would be charged $40 for an hour. Now that I had a location and an idea, I actually had to reach out to Buttonwood Park Zoo to actually book the event. So I reached out to them via email and explained that I wanted to host one of their live animal presentations for my senior project, and then explained what that was. They responded positively and asked for possible times and dates. They did specify that they didn't want May, April, or August because those were the busiest times for them. And I didn't want to do it in November or December because I was too close to the current date and I needed time to advertise. That left us with January through March. As I decided on February because I had a week-long school break that the event could be hosted through. For time, I decided I could start anytime between 11 and 2 p.m., though that was immediately rebutted by Buttonwood Park Zoo saying they didn't want anything later than 12 p.m. So after back and forth with both the zoo and the library, I decided on February 17th with a start time of 10:15 a.m. So now that the event was official in all capacities, I actually had to start advertising it. So my first attempt was actually to get in the winter edition of the Mills Recreation brochure. I'd reached out to Jeff Page to try and organize this, but after a while it fell through and never actually made it into the brochure for some unspecified reason, so I did change my tactics. The first thing I did was create physical eye-catching posters and put a QR code on them to a sign-up form. These posters were then posted around the school and the library to try and gain people's attention. These posters are also created digitally and posted on social media to try and gain a wider audience. Lastly, I also tried doing word of mouth, but I don't feel that was particularly successful. So, the day of the event. It started with the representative from the zoo, a woman named Kelsey, arriving at the library on time. As people started to trickle in, she started an unofficial Q&A with the kids, answering any questions they had while I checked in the adults and collected payment. Once everyone was here, the event started officially with a book being read to the group called What Do You Do with a Tale Like That?, which is all about tale-related animal adaptations. Once done, she moved on to a section about adaptations and tools in which she produced a bag full of common household tools that included tongs, straws, and other such items, and had the kids match each of them to an animal adaptation that they knew of. After a while of that, we moved on to the last section, which was a live animal ambassador. Kelsey brought with her a monkey-tailed skink named Chozul, and had him sit on a perch. As he did, she answered all questions from children and adults alike about Chozul, as well as explaining what he was, where he came from, where they are native to, and what they eat in both the wild and the zoo. No one but Kelsey was actually allowed to touch Chozul, but she did bring him around so everyone could have a very close-up look at him. So, about the events. Positives. I felt like everyone had a very positive time during the event as they all stayed after and lingered while asking many questions. Because of this, I felt like they all left with a greater understanding and respect for the animals, especially the children, as they were all much more enthusiastic than when they started. I also felt like the participants was a good number because the 6 children and the guardians created a group that wasn't too small, but wasn't too big that it felt impersonal and overbearing. There were some hurdles with the event, however. The first and most important was that there were quite a lot of no-shows. Only about half the people who signed up actually showed up. Luckily, this was easy to rectify as none of them who didn't show up actually paid yet, so I didn't have to deal with any refunds. There was also a misunderstanding in which someone tried to join without realizing it was a paid event. This was easily rectified by just simply informing them that they would either pay or leave. There was also an issue with payment, as neither Buttonwood nor the library actually told me how to pay, but luckily simply by asking Chelsea and employee at the library, it was easy to figure out I just needed to write checks for both, and I did that on the day. The last and most importantly, what negative was actually the profit. I only made enough to cover about a third of the costs, so I had to figure out a way to cover the rest. This was achieved by doing a fundraiser. Originally, it was suggested to me that I could do something with a food and animal theme, though I was running out of time to do something, so I opted for a simple GoFundMe. I set one up and created a poster with a QR code that went into the high school newsletter. I also sent it to multiple friends and families to gain more donations. However, despite having it up for multiple months, I didn't make enough to cover the event. I had to cover the last few dollars out of pocket. So, changes to make for next time. Next time, I would definitely start advertising more forcefully and for longer. This is to try and get the word out of the event to more people, to try and get more people to actually sign up so they'll rely less on fundraising afterwards. I would also implement a punishment for no-shows to try and discourage it. It likely wouldn't be harsh, but just refusing a refund unless a good reason is provided, or just requiring everyone to pay up front. This would allow for better event management as there would be less no-shows and the number of participants would be more accurate. So, connection to a vision of a graduate. My project connects to a vision of a graduate in a couple different ways. It connects to character as it teaches people to interact with empathy and compassion towards the animals we share a planet with, as well as how to treat them with dignity and respect. It connects to communication by having me try and convey the message of conservation clearly in a variety of contexts. It connects to collaboration, as the goal of the project was to inspire and motivate others towards a common vision of participating and respecting conservation. It connects to critical thinking by requiring me to ask probing questions about conservation and gain a deeper understanding of it, as well as its methods and why it's required. A special thank you to some of the people who helped me with my project. I'd like to thank my mentor, Miss Cheney, for being such a good mentor and allowing me to ask all my questions. To my mum for allowing me to bounce ideas off her and help solidify my ideas. To Kelsey and Cho Zul from Buttonwood Park Zoo for being so accommodating and running such a smooth show. And specifically to Cho Zul for being so adorable and being such a great animal ambassador. I would like to thank Rachel Silverman and Kim Tolson from the library for helping me with accommodations and letting me do this in the first place. Questions?